Hello and welcome once again to Spa for the ADAC GT Masters Race 2 of 2 this weekend. 5-minute board is up, 5 minutes away from this hour-long GT Masters race. And so looking forward to that, as we can see Christian Ab there, looks like he's directing traffic. We focus in on the Bentley Continental, just one of a supreme mix of cars that feature in the ADAC GT Masters. That's the car of Hamprecht and Schmidt. Race duration, 60 minutes then. Circuit length, 7 kilometres. 20 cars, 7 car brands, 13 teams. Dave Richardson, and alongside me, David Addison.
Looking forward to what's going to be another entertaining hour on a circuit that, a bit like yesterday, is still slightly damp. A lot of overnight rain, a lot of fog hung over the circuit this morning. But Bernd Schneider, you're looking at, a double Spa 24 Hours winner. He is the man making his championship debut this weekend, who is on pole position. And for a man who has been around for a season or two and claims he's retired, certainly he retired from the DTM, but has been more active, I think, than ever with all these Mercedes drives in random events and championships that have come his way. He's won the Bathurst 12 Hour, the Spa 24, the Barcelona 24 Hours. He has been a hugely in-demand Mercedes driver, and he put this car of Harry Protchik onto pole position in Q2 on Friday afternoon.
If I'm honest with you, I expected a little better than P7 yesterday, in the race yesterday.
But I think he was hampered by Protchik getting stuck in traffic in the first stint.
Right.
And Schneider, let's be fair, was the real focus of attention in the second stint as he tried to haul that car up the order. Had a remarkable battle with Edward Sandstrom's Audi, which included overtaking him round the outside with all 4 wheels off the track. And he was told, give the place back.
Yes, and he did.
He did. Now, this is a race with, of course, mandatory pit stops, 3 minutes to go to the start. And there's a car to watch, Dave.
Absolutely, the car of Claudia Hurtgen, and another star, in my opinion, Uwe Olsen. A huge, huge motor racing character.
Yes, and perhaps the one predictable thing about Uwe Olsen is that he's unpredictable.
Yes.
Because he is, undoubtedly, a very quick driver. Surprisingly, he's given occasional impetuous moments. He's got a pretty good long-distance record, and actually he's a winner of the Spa 24 Hours and was an FIA GT1 driver in Porsches in the late 1990s. He had his spell for Mercedes in the DTM before he antagonised Norbert Haug, and that was the end of that. And it was Gary Paffett that took his seat in the DTM, and great things came. But Uwe Olsen then went on to win again in the FIA GT Championship with Michael Bartels in the Celine, if you go back to the mid-noughties, and he's raced in all sorts of things since. German Carrera Cup, Speed Car, the VLN, you name it, and he starts in this BMW that he shares with Claudia Hurtgen. And a Schneider-Olsen battle for the first few laps, I think, is going to be something to savour.
I think so too. We just saw a shot of the cloud overhead, and I would be surprised, perhaps, David, over the course of the 60 minutes of this race, if we didn't get a shower.
Yeah, I mean, the local experts say, no rain today. It'll be a bit grey and drizzly, but we shouldn't get much rain. But I agree with you. It is certainly heavy cloud, and there's no break in it. Yesterday, there were discernible blue bits, but as you look over Eau Rouge there, it is grey, grey, grey. It's a fabulous circuit, Spa. It's in a great part of the world. The topography is superb. Everything around this track echoes of its heritage that dates back to the 1920s. And there, Les Combes, that's been the scene of lots of drama over the course of the multitude of races that have been here at Spa this weekend. Well, there, Bernd Schneider will start. Harry Protchik will go second in the Mercedes run by HP Racing. Bernd Schneider is wished well as the grid is now cleared. Uwe Olsen and Claudia Hurtgen in the BMW. Uwe Olsen to start. Claudia Hurtgen, former Formula 3 front runner, came into GT racing in the early days of the BPR Global GT Series in the 1990s, sharing with Stefan Ortelli. There on the second row, the grid, Dominic Baumann, who won with Claudia Hurtgen the last time that the ADAC GT Masters was here in 2013. Then he had another win yesterday, so it's sort of back-to-back wins, but with a 2-year break.
Yes. Then we see the car of Luca Ludwig and Sebastian Asch, which finished P2 in the race yesterday. That Mercedes.
Championship leaders, but yet to win a race.
Yes. But then, you know, as you explained yesterday, it's all about points, isn't it? It's all about consistency. It's all about constant point scoring.
And that car running with 15 kilos of success weight on board. You get success weight for your results at the previous meeting, and also you get weight if you are a single race entry or new into the championship. And so there are some cars that are carrying 40 kilos, like, for example, the Ragginger Battler Porsche that we'll come to in a moment when we run through the grid. The green flag lap then is underway in readiness of round 6.
ADAC GT Masters then, race 2 of the weekend. The formation lap starts, and the cars roar away from the tarmac here at Spa-Francorchamps, on board with Bernd Schneider, then the HP Racing Mercedes-Benz SLS AMG GT3. So the safety car ahead. And it's not until you stand at this point and look up, David Addison, that you really appreciate what an uphill climb it is.
Absolutely right. And it's all about momentum. See, if you have to lift during that corner, then you are so vulnerable along this part of the circuit. And this is still a climb as well. You're still heading uphill at this point.
Yeah.
And this, certainly in single-seater racing, is where all the slipstreaming can take place. In GT racing, it's all about grunt.
So, there, a great shot as we look back. And there you can see the line that is the preferable line.
But singular. It is one dry line. Here's the grid.
Schneider, Olsen, what a front row. Then it's Baumann and Ludwig on row 2 of the grid. Then we see Klaus Bachler and Daniel Kylwitz. Daniel Kylwitz, former champion. Kelvin van der Linde and Edward Sandstrom. Kelvin van der Linde, of course, the current champion. Hamprecht and Diego Alesi will go P9 and 10. Then it's Beiseng and Jons. Then we see Blecker Molen and Sven Bart, P13 and 14. Rahal Frey and Robert Renauer. Frey denied at the very end of the race yesterday.
Can I just interrupt your grid and say it's raining at the start line?
It is pouring down at the start line. You're absolutely right. Now, I said we could get a shower.
It has been declared a wet race. It has been declared a wet race, and that means that the tyre choice is down to the teams. Are they going to go into this and hope it's a passing shower and tiptoe round? Are they going to all bail for the pit lane and go on to wets? Is the race director going to delay the start?
All this will play out on our screens. But there you can see the brollies that have been put up. The wet weather tyres are coming out.
But you see, because it's been declared a wet race,
they had the choice, didn't they?
That puts the emphasis on the teams to sort out the tyres, not the officials.
Right.
So I suspect the race will be started, but you'll find everybody in the pit lane.
Well, we will see. It is absolutely hooning down as we speak, and certainly that would lend credence to what you're saying, as everyone in the pit lane seems to be getting ready.
Just looking down to the exit of the bus stop chicane and just seeing if I can spot the marshal's post where the officials will be, if there is a board, if there's any flag that would indicate that the race is going to be suspended. Sven Stopper, the race director, now has a pretty tough call here, but let's see. Red flag is on the screen. The race will be delayed so the teams can change onto wet tyres. A red flag has just come up on the timing screen. Now, looking around the circuit, yes, red lights are flashing. The start will be delayed in order to enable everybody to go onto wet tyres.
And there you can see the red flag being waved, and that is from the old start-finish section of the circuit, the old grid, and there, red flag there too. So, well, it's really interesting. It came down, it was hooning down, David, and now it's abated a little bit.
I would still tiptoe round on slicks for the first few laps.
It's a long race, isn't it?
It is. I think, even though they'll start on wets, they'll all have to look after them to the round of pit stops, and there'll be a tyre change within that as well. I suspect it will dry out pretty quickly because it's starting to ease, as you say. What we don't really know is how wet it is all around the lap yet. Anyway, the start is delayed. They're going to go to the grid. It's going to be a long delay, this, because the teams are going to have to get all the equipment onto the grid. They're going to have to do a tyre change, and then we're going to have the countdown again.
Right.
So you're looking at a fair few minutes, I think. There's
Claudia Hurtgen. Yep.
It's a shame that things like this happen because, you know, if that rain had come 2 minutes later, we'd be into the race, and the whole complex of the race would have been changed because it would have been down to the teams to work the strategy best. Now, we're going to get this delay, and everyone's going to start on the same basis, aren't we?
From our vantage point, it's turned into just it's a fairly heavy drizzle, isn't it? It's not torrential as it was. So,
but you can understand the race director wanting somebody to say to him, "Why did you delay the start?" Not "Why didn't you?"
Of course.
And so, in that respect, okay, you can understand why it's happening. So the cars come to the grid, and when the teams are given the signal, they will be allowed onto the grid, and then we'll have tyre changing, and then we'll get back underway. The pit lane has been closed, the officials getting everybody onto the grid, not having anybody come down the pit road. What's going to be interesting is to see if anybody is going to be an absolute gambler and stay on slicks.
Well, do you know what? As we look at the conditions now, and in fairness, the intensity seems to have increased a little bit. And I mean, yeah, that's the thing here at Spa. And when it is such a long lap, David, and you made the point just a few moments ago, what we're seeing here, right on the start-finish line, it could be completely different at the other end of the circuit.
Absolutely right. You see, the cars are going up on jacks. Some of the teams aren't there yet, so it's a little bit deceptive to say that no work is happening on certain cars. But
how big a call do the drivers have in this decision?
A lot in this.
Because they're the ones that have, they've done the formation lap.
Precisely. They have the data. They've been out there. But the trouble is that while they're sitting on the grid now, that information is becoming less relevant because they aren't out there assessing the track again. If you're with me, they know what it was like a minute or so ago, but they don't know now whether it's getting any better or any worse over there. So Schneider's going on to wets.
We were just looking at the Zaxby car of Ash and Ludwig, and one of the engineers had his head right under the wing. Are there adjustments that can be made in addition, David, to put the wet weather tyres on?
It might just be roll bar.
Again, there, look.
Yeah, roll bar settings and things like that. You can't see it on this shot, but if you look behind the Alps and BMW, look at that big puddle that's forming. Just see to the back of it. The rain is getting heavier again. And so there's the evidence, the bedraggled spectator under his brolly. It is getting wetter and wetter and wetter. And so the teams, as I look down, are pretty much all going on to wets. And so the drivers who've had this exploratory lap now have to sit and wait just while the conditions turn nasty on them.
Being told, 10-minute delay to the start.
Okay.
And the race duration reduced to 57 minutes.
Okay, because that will allow for another green flag lap, and therefore that takes away the risk of running out of fuel, because they will have fueled these cars based on the number of laps for an hour, and they're therefore going to have to do an extra lap, aren't they? An extra formation lap.
Yeah.
And it also helps to nudge the timetable back on track as well a little bit.
That's what we're being told.
By saving 3 minutes. That makes sense. What I'm not sure is what that does to the pit window.
We've not had the official notification of that. That is just what we're being told.
Okay. Does make sense, because as I say, these cars will be fueled for an hour.
Yeah.
Having said that, if it's wet, you're going slower, you're
not
using less fuel.
Yes.
But you don't know if it's going to dry out at the end, however. It's funny this, because Dave said a few moments ago that it was heavy drizzle. It's gone to rain, and it's come back to drizzle again. I must go and have a word with the Belgian that was telling me there'll be no rain today.
There is Christian Abt, who's directing operations with his headphones on, radio to team members and drivers as well.
And those slicks are now a little bit redundant, aren't they?
Well, certainly it would seem so, because again the intensity has increased a little bit now. As you can see, the raindrops bouncing on the tarmac there alongside the Corvette Z06. And
in a number of cases, the teams are now leaving the grid with the tyre trolleys, which are stacked with the slicks. We are 7 minutes, 6.5 minutes away from the formation lap starting. My point being about the tyres, that they are under no hesitation that it's going to be a wet track now, and they need the wet tyres. Nobody is staying there with slicks to change at the last minute. They're all committed to wet. That's how bad it is. And the timing screen is now displaying 57 minutes.
So there we have it then. The new formation lap will start in exactly 6 minutes' time. And new race duration is 57 minutes. 57 minutes as the rain continues to come down here. All the engineers out there on track. And I can see from my vantage point how hard the engineers are working in terms of adjusting the rear wing as well. Certainly that on the Uwe Olsen car. So there is the new wet shod Bernd Schneider machine. Pressure's just being adjusted. That came just at the wrong time, didn't it?
Yeah, if
or
that
right time, depending upon your viewpoint.
Right time for the teams, but if that had happened a couple of minutes later and the race had started, then it would have been absolutely fascinating to see how the teams dealt with it and what dramas that would have sparked. But anyway, we have what we have. And therefore the 5-minute board has just been shown, and that was the siren. You could hear the klaxon being sounded to get 5 minutes communicated across to the teams. Windscreen with a bit of rain X on it now. Try and make sure that the rain gets blown off the screen. Uwe Altzen in the wet will be one to watch. I still have this memory of being in the second and last Bathurst 24-hour race commentary booth a long time ago, and it was absolutely torrential rain in the dark, and Uwe Altzen got into a Porsche and went out, and I thought, this is going to be the accident of the race. And do you know what? He was inch perfect in the lousiest conditions, up and down the mountain. He was an utter hero. So I reckon Altzen in this could be well worth watching. There is Luca Ludwig at the wheel of the Zach Speed Mercedes. Funny how life moves on, isn't it? Because go back to the mid-1980s and Zach Speed had a Formula 1 chassis of its own construction driven by Bert Schneider.
Extraordinary. I was saying off air only earlier, the encyclopedia that is alongside me, and the ability for him to
find
recall that information from his encyclopedia at a moment's notice, just when it's not called for, is incredible.
That person has now left, and I'm here, Dave. I know, right? So the tyre trolleys, you can see, are being stacked with the slick tyres, and look how wet those slick tyres are. And of course, brand new ones there, still with the labels on. But they might be needed in the second part of the race.
You know, we still have a 57-minute race to do.
And I would say it's brightening up. It is still raining. I'm watching this puddle on the grid. That's our litmus test. There it is, you can see, bouncing off the ground. In front of the Mercedes of Luca Ludwig. What this also is telling us is that on the rolling start, if you are on the outside line, you are going to have to be very, very careful when you nail the throttle, because that standing water is there, arms outstretched, ready to catch you out, and you could be in real trouble. At least the wipers are working.
So, the information on the screen then is your new formation lap will start at midday 15, just 3 minutes away. New race duration is 57 minutes.
And the weather forecast?
It's going to, well, I think it'll dry. It'll stop raining and it will dry out within the course of 57 minutes. Within the course of the 57 minutes.
Right.
But there's no absolute scientific proof to that. It may not. It's just another variable to factor in. There we can see on different parts of the circuit, because we do have 7 kilometres here. It's not a little, it's not a small track, is it?
No.
And the weather can be very different at different parts. And that is literally just across the paddock, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's wet in itself, but there's no
standing puddles there, David.
No. Lights on, the message now being instructed to the teams. So the cars all have to have the lights illuminated. Now there, you can see the water is still falling and the puddles are still forming, and that's on the grid. It does look pretty horrible at that part of the circuit. But actually, despite the fact it's raining, it's not that gloomy.
No, it's bright, isn't it?
Yeah. It really is typical, unique Spa weather.
It's one of those things that throws into the mix and makes this place ever more appealing in many ways.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can remember a Spa 24 hours a few years ago where we had the safety car deployed time and time and time again because the circuit was awash. And at one point the race director had sort of had enough of it, and he said, right, we'll bring it in. This time, let the powerboat race recommence.
Great sense of humour.
A man called Eduardo Freitas, who's now the World Endurance Championship race director, who is a good guy. And it was just one of those races where it rained and it rained and it rained and it rained. Right, engines fire up, wipers on. And the fact there that you can see how much water is still being dissipated across the screen shows you how the rain is still falling.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, if you're just joining us, we had a formation lap, which was perhaps started in the dry, then the heavens opened, and the race director decided to delay the start, allow the teams on to put wet weather tyres onto the cars. We now have a new race duration of 57 minutes, and the formation lap is but 20 seconds away from starting. Formation lap 2.
Yes. And there is the board saying 15 seconds, and the cars will go either side of the cameraman there at the front of the grid, and you can just drool over this fabulous GT grid. Mercedes and BMW on the front row. It is BMW and Mercedes on the second row. It's Porsche and Chevrolet on the third. It's all Audi on the fourth row. It's Bentley and Chevrolet on the fifth. The cars now accelerate away.
So we were midway through describing the grid when you noticed that right in front of our commentary booth, the heavens were really open, and it was pouring down, and that was how close it was. It literally started just as the cars left the grid, really, and be an awful lot of standing water in parts of the circuit. We're on board with Dominic Baumann, the Z4 GT3. Look back at that Corvette, the roller Corvette, which has been a championship-winning car in the ADAC GT Masters.
I have another question for you.
Okay.
She may not be able to answer. Are we going to have more than one safety car lap?
I think we will. But we have no information to say that. But I think we will. I think it will end up becoming a safety car start.
We haven't been told of that, but you could be right. Let's have another go at this grid then.
Thank you. It's Schneider Olsen on the front row. Mercedes, BMW, Mercedes then. Baumann and Luca Ludwig. Then we see Klaus Bachler and Daniel Kylewitz, P5 and P6. Kelvin van der Linde, the champion, runs with Sandstrom alongside. Then it's Hamprecht and Diego Alesi, Bentley and Corvette. Then it's Baseng and Christy Jons, 2 Audi R8 LMS Ultras. Bentley Continental driven by Jeroen Blecker-Molen and Sven Bart in the Corvette. Rahul Frey and Robert Renauer. Then we see Dominic Joost and Nicky Thiem. Sladecker and Strauss are next on the grid. And we managed to get through that without without you necessarily interrupting me with more news.
And while you were describing the grid, Dave, I was looking at the cars heading up towards Les Combes and just looking at how gloomy there it was and how wet it is. You can see the spray being generated, and off the road and into the wall already has gone the BMW of Sladecker. Samuel Sladecker is off the road, and that's going to delay the start again unless he can get it going, which he's trying to. That's up at Les Combes, and he's just slithered off the road, and now if he can get it off the wet grass there, then he's done well. How he got there was like this. He just understeered himself out wide. But that shows you how treacherous the conditions are. He has got it off the wet grass. Good job. But this rain is a lot heavier than we were giving it credit for.
Dare I say it, he drags a load of grass and mud out onto the track as well, just to add to the mire.
And that is the limited view that Klaus Bachler has in the Schutz Motorsport Porsche.
Oh, that's awful, isn't it?
It's not pleasant. You see, on the one side of the coin, you want to be the race leader because you've got the visibility. But the trouble is, you're the first one to find the puddles.
Yeah.
You're the pioneer. It's nice here in the dry, isn't it? Letting everybody else have to worry about the conditions outside. I mean, even the safety car is having to treat this with some caution. And just look at the amount of spray, and it hangs in the air here. And of course, with the trees hanging over the circuit, it's got nowhere to go at certain places.
Well, we've still got no information as we look back at one of the cameras that's on the back of one of the cars. I mean, the visibility is going to be utterly atrocious, isn't it? As Claudia Herken once again looks on and thinks,
why am I doing this?
I'm glad Uber's in the car.
Yeah. But it's going to be very, very tippy-toey around the first lap. Got to say, actually, that if you want anybody batting your wicket in these conditions with all the experience, Ben Schneider is the man.
Maybe so.
Because there are years of experience inside that crash helmet. The Schubert team extra formation lap is the call, and that's just come up on the timing screen as well. So we are going to have another green flag lap. And that is to enable the drivers another chance to have a look at the puddles before they are released. It's not that it's an untidy start, it's on safety grounds, so it's another warming up lap. So the cars now turn through the bus stop. What this also does is reduce the benefit that the pro drivers can make in the race, because don't forget the race is shortened anyway, only by 3 minutes, which is basically a lap and a half. But within the pro drivers' stint, the higher graded drivers' stint that we're looking at now, they've just lost another racing lap by having to do this extra formation lap. And therefore, there is less time for the pros to try and build an advantage for the lesser graded drivers in the second stint. And what that's going to do is put more onus on the ability of the second drivers to do the work in stint 2.
Yes, right. I was just... the race duration has now been reduced still further from 57 to 54, because I was about to say that the clock is not ticking down, but of course we're on an extra formation lap, aren't we? The race has not started. It's not going to be a safety car start necessarily, is it? This is an extra...
It's 2 warming up laps, if you like, and for each warming up lap, 3 minutes taken off.
Yeah.
So we're down to 54 minutes. We're trying to work out what that does to the pit window, but my brain hurts at the moment. I will get to that in a minute. I'll go back to the regulations. The cars, in the meantime, head up towards Les Combes. Bernd Schneider's view isn't that bad, of course, because he's up front, but it's those in the pack that are really going to struggle.
And that's looking back at the spray that's being chucked up.
Yeah. And don't forget, this is low speed as well. When they get going in earnest, it's going to be pretty nasty.
On board with Dominic Baumann to the right-hand side of your screen then, with the Uwe Olsen BMW ahead. And, you know, you make a fair point that the spray that we're seeing at the moment is actually not representative of what you will see in the race, because the cars will be so much quicker. This is Bernd Schneider, who, as you rightly said, he's the one that has the huge advantage of not having that spray. The disadvantage he has is he's going to be testing the limits of each and every part of this tarmac, isn't he?
Yeah.
Right.
Now this is Sledecka, who's already had one off, and I have a horrible feeling he might illustrate a second one. But look at this part of the circuit and look at the water that he's shoveling out of the way. That is how bad it is. There is a second extra formation lap that has just come up on the screen.
Does that mean this is the second? Or that there will be another one after this?
Well, it's gone from saying extra formation. It's formation lap, then extra formation, then it's second. So I think we're going to be looking at effectively a 50-minute race here, aren't we? The time is staying at 54 minutes, but the timing screen is now saying it's gone to 51. Thank you. So it is an extra.
And what this is doing, assuming that the pit window doesn't alter, to reinforce the point that you made earlier, what this is doing is allowing those pro drivers not to have the advantage of being able to spend more time in the car and, you know, perhaps their additional experience in conditions like that, where they can perhaps make more of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a shorter stint in which to do the hard work, and therefore the cars potentially will be tighter bunched when we get to the pit window, and therefore the AMs, the lesser graded drivers, become more important. And really what you then need to be looking for is the disparity of pace between the drivers in the second stint. All of these are the higher graded drivers, so largely they'll be able to run at roughly the same pace given a few tenths. Yes. But when you get to the lesser graded drivers, the bronzes and the silvers all mixed together, there is more difference, a greater difference I should say, in their pace, and therefore more potentially can happen in that part of the race. Here you're looking at tenths between the lap times of drivers, but when you get to the lesser graded, it could be a second a lap quicker, it could be 2 seconds difference between some of them, and therefore I think that the race is going to be decided after the pit stops when you get the other set of drivers out.
Yes, you're right.
Meantime, there are some other bedraggled people down in the pit lane, and the second extra formation lap has just got underway. So, hopefully, by the end of this, we will be good to go. There's another GT championship that's been running this weekend in the south of France, where apparently it's been glorious sunshine.
Thanks.
Here,
thank you.
It's a tad damp. This is Bernd Schneider's view then, as he goes down through Eau Rouge. And it may also be, of course, that some of this extra formation lap is coming from the drivers, because if they are saying to the teams it's really wet at such a point of the circuit, and the teams are able to get that to the race director, this may be an overall team effort not to get the race underway until, you know, it is properly safe to do it. What you often find as well in situations like this is that the safety car will go quicker
I was going to
on
say.
a second and then quicker again on a third lap to give the drivers...
Build up the...
Yeah, rather than going straight from slow into race conditions, they gradually build up and also, importantly, get used to the track surface at a quicker and then a quicker again speed. So you have to say that in that respect, Sven Stopper is doing the right thing, and also no more messages about formation laps are on our timing screen. So this does suggest that we'll be good to go this time.
We're going to go racing.
Yeah.
Well, the race duration has been cut to 51 minutes now. As we look at the spray coming off back of a car through Eau Rouge. And there is the car that's pacing them around, the safety car. Bernd Schneider, Uwe Olsen, Dominic Baumann, Luca Ludwig. First two rows of the grid. And we're on board with Bernd Schneider right now.
He's working his way down towards Podium. I would suggest this isn't the fastest formation lap that there has ever been, but the drivers now are starting to urge a bit of warmth into the tyres as best they can. And the cars turn their way through that long left at Podium. You see the brands scrolling through: Bentley, Corvette, Audi, Porsche, Nissan, Audi and BMW, the car of Samuel Sladecka at the back of the pack.
Which has already been in the walls.
Indeed.
Or the walls.
But actually, because it's a big, durable beast, it's carried
Hey.
on. A quick word also, Dave, we ought to pick up on number 1 Audi, which for this race starts 7th. We talked about the reigning champion, Kelvin van der Linde, at the wheel. Never got into the race yesterday because on a damp track, nothing like this, Stefan Vakabauer put it backwards into the wall on cold tyres on the first lap, and the damage put it out of the race.
You thought that, you know, and you quite correctly said that, you know, if those guys could get the damage repaired, they'd send the car back out again and use it as a test session. We weren't even able to do that, were they?
And this morning there was the warm-up, but it was 17th of the 18 that set a time, which on the one hand you could say suggests that Vakabauer drove it, not van der Linde, but equally suggests that all was not well. It was, however, a damp and slightly foggy road with which they had to contend, but I would still be a little bit nervous about tipping number 1 for a good result, but we will see.
Yes. P7 on the grid for van der Linde, former Sirocco R Cup champion, South African star, and winner of the GT Masters last year, of course, with Rennie Rast in that very car, the Audi R8 LMS Ultra. And the car's all bunching up into grid order now, David, so your information, or lack of information on the screen, is absolutely correct. We're going to go racing this time. Race duration is reduced to 51 minutes. Olsen, Schneider, wet, but the rain is receding. There's no question about that as they make their way through the bus stop chicane and head up towards the start. The lights at the top of the gantry go green, and we are racing. Luca Ludwig trying to dive up the middle there and trying to deny the BMW. As Schneider leads them through. Ludwig with a very, very wide line through that first turn. The rest of the pack goes through, and just look at the spray that is being kicked up. The Corvette on the outside. There is Schneider, and Ludwig is already bouncing almost on the back of the Uwe Olsen BMW for P2. Brilliant start from Kyle Witz in the number 66 Corvette. David already moved up 2 or 3 places. And there you can see it, P4 now.
And he's right up on the back of Ludwig, who is stuck behind Olsen, who can't find a way past Schneider. And in the spray, they're struggling for visibility. This is Schneider's view. But let's look at that ball that hangs in the air, all of that water, as they come up towards Les Combes. It's 4 for the race lead. And then yesterday's winners, Baumann and Klingman. Dominic Baumann starting. He is next in the queue. And another car that's going backwards is Klaus Bachler, isn't it? Because that car was on the 3rd row, and the yellow Porsche has gone tumbling down the order here.
Just look at that Corvette trying to find a way through. It's Schneider, Olsen, then we see Ludwig, and then it's Kyle Witz. There is Kyle Witz in the Corvette.
And then this little battle pack is behind Diego Alessi, who has made some progress, but Alessi has got them stacked up behind him. I'm still worried about Bachler's Porsche, though, because that is losing place after place after place.
So Schneider, with the advantage then of not being mired in spray, is testing the track conditions, but he's also managing to get away as Ludwig very, very close to Uwe Olsen there, trying to find a way. And we look back from the Olsen machine, and that's how much spray is being kicked off of it, right into the windscreen of Ludwig, who dives up the inside of Uwe Olsen. Olsen gives him racing room, and Luca Ludwig moves up into P2 now, and the chase is on to Bernd Schneider.
Interesting that the two Mercedes seem to be working better in these conditions, isn't it? So Schneider getting away, Ludwig up into second place. That car yesterday was able to repel all comers in the first few laps and then hang on to second place and do a good job. Sebastian Ash looks on as well, but now let's see whether or not the two Mercedes can get themselves together. Look at the different shapes as well and the way they cut through the water. Great shot of Karlvitz with the Corvette there, getting through the spray as they work their way down towards the bus stop, and he's hunting down Uwe Olsen now. Daniel Karlvitz then in the Corvette brakes, turns into the right, then the left. But Ludwig, for my money, is going to be the one to watch now to see how he can bring the gap down relative to Schneider.
It was Karlvitz teamed up with Diego Alesi that was championship winning in that Corvette. And look at him now, all over the back of Uwe Olsen, trying to find. Olsen makes the BMW as wide as he possibly can. He's certainly not going to make it easy for Karlvitz to find a way through, but Karlvitz now goes alongside him as they run down, and the Corvette certainly looks superior.
That's on torque. Because that car's got such a lot of torque, it's not as susceptible to wheel spin as other cars are, and therefore that big grunty engine is really, really helping, and that car then up into third place.
Uwe Olsen tracking him all the way, but Karlvitz moves himself up a further, and that's what Uwe Olsen can see. It's absolutely nothing.
It's like sitting in a shower. Up towards the Les Combes sequence they come, but the lead gap is coming down, no question. Olsen there gets out of the draft, really to have a look where he's going more than anything. It's not so much to try and overtake, it's just to try and see something as they come now out of Les Combes. So difficult to know where you are, to measure your braking points. You're having to do that really on the lights of the car ahead, or by look out of the side window and see possibly reference points by the side, and you think, okay, that's where I am, now I need to brake.
So there is the Karlvitz car, which is now running P3. Uwe Olsen down to P4. You're absolutely right that Ludwig really is closing in towards Bernd Schneider. There's the order on the left-hand side of the screen for you. And there is the Corvette. The Callaway competition Corvette that's running in P3, but it's the two Mercedes up front.
But look at the way the gap is coming down between Schneider and Ludwig, because that was, on the opening lap, quite a margin, and Luca Ludwig is getting closer and closer and closer.
So as we wait to pick the cars up, then here they come. Bernd Schneider then leads the way, but Luca Ludwig is tracking him all the way, and there is Klaus Ludwig, who is looking on, smiling. And that is just the spray that's coming off the back of this HP Racing Mercedes-Benz. It's the Zack-Speed Mercedes-Benz that's behind him in P2, but now ever closer is Luca Ludwig, and lining up Bernd Schneider. Now Schneider full of experience. Be aware of the fact that Ludwig is as close as he is, and that gap now is next to nothing. Not that far behind also is the Karlvitz car as well. And Luca Ludwig all over the back of the Bernd Schneider. The back end of Schneider's car just looked a little bit twitchy then through that turn one. And now Luca Ludwig will line up the Bernd Schneider Mercedes, and can he do anything down to Rouge? And then heading up towards the Kemmel Straight that follows the climb. Is Ludwig going to be able to be close enough? I think Schneider has clawed just a little bit back there, but now Luca Ludwig again tries to reel him in. So again, Luca Ludwig just moves to the outside, as possibly as much for visibility as for the opportunity to try and get past, because he wasn't close enough to be able to do so.
I love the fact that if you go back to 1997, Bernd Schneider had Klaus Ludwig as his co-driver in FIA GT races. The year after, he was his main rival in the sister car, and now Bernd Schneider is trying to keep his son at bay. Luca Ludwig is right on his tail, and the evergreen Bernd Schneider is as competitive as ever. This is the first weekend we've seen him in the ADAC GT Masters Championship. Bernd Schneider is an absolute legend, and Luca Ludwig is learning a trick or two here. I mean, he comes from good racing stock, don't get me wrong, because Klaus Ludwig is another German motor racing hero. And Luca Ludwig gets out of the draft, has a look at the line for Poirier, then slots back in. Can't do anything about the race-leading Mercedes there. But I still come back to the earlier point. It's interesting to see how well the Mercedes work in these conditions, because the other brands are falling away.
Yes, they are. And there, P1 and P2, Bernd Schneider and Luca Ludwig. Fascinating that they were co-drivers, Klaus Ludwig and Bernd Schneider. And now it's Klaus's son, Luca, that's in the car that sits behind Bernd Schneider.
There's Roland Ash with his son Sebastian.
Yes.
Roland, another former DTM and then Super Touring racer, and he's watching on, and he can see that the white Zack-Speed run Mercedes is getting very towy now. But of course, Bernd Schneider knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly where to place the car. These lapping in the high 243s or 242s in the case of the chasing Luca Ludwig Mercedes last time around. And in third place is Daniel Kylwitz. And after that, you need your binoculars to find anybody else, because they're really storming off into the distance through the bus stops. Slightly quirky line by Ludwig there, which will have just lost him a length, but up they come over the timing line. Last time through, the gap was only 0.3 of a second. This time it's 0.6 of a second. And then behind them is Kylwitz, who is lapping fractionally faster than Ludwig. Only fractionally, but he's getting there.
For my money, I think that gap is coming down a little bit, P2 to P3.
But then Alton fourth is falling away. He's being caught a bit by Dominic Baumann, but the top three are running in the 241s. Everybody else is 243 or slower. In other words, this leading trio is scampering up the road. The second stint's going to be interesting to see who the stars could be out of those lesser graded drivers. Why is Klaus Bachler's Porsche in 11th place, other than the fact that it doesn't like the wet?
The back end of the Bernd Schneider car just stepped out a little bit there. Luca Ludwig. So many Ludwigs.
It was going to happen.
It was. There is Daniel Kylwitz.
Now Schneider, incidentally, has done the fastest lap of the race. That's down to visibility as much as anything else. There is Kylwitz in the Corvette. As I say, a bit like the Mercedes, actually, because they've got big engines and lots of torque. That helps in these horrible wet conditions, and that's really why you're seeing those three now up near the front of the field. One car that never got into the race, interestingly, was the Florian Strauss MRS Nissan that pitted on those formation laps and hasn't got into the race. Whether that's water in the works or something else, we don't know, but that car, sad to say, didn't get to the start.
So then, here is our race leader. The rain is still falling, despite my protestations that I thought it was going to probably stop and it will brighten up, but it is still coming down at a reasonable rate. And you can see it on the camera shot there, and that's another part of the circuit to the one that we're at. And, well, the spray that's being thrown up from the back of those two Mercedes indicative of there. You can see just how heavy it is coming down, David. So exactly the right call, wasn't it, to delay the start of the race.
And, of course, it is still falling, and we had a lot of rain fall before the race. All it's doing is adding to it, and therefore the amount of standing water is becoming more and more of a hazard as this race wears on now. If you go offline, you're going to be in real strife, and that, to be fair, is why overtaking is so difficult, because A, you can't see very much, and B, as soon as you go anywhere near an overtake, you're going to find even more water. There's no dry line, don't get me wrong, but offline, it's even worse. You know, at least if you're in the wheel tracks of the car ahead, that's carving through the water and helping you a little bit. Onto the pit straight, where it's a little bit better than it has been at other parts of the circuit. Over the timing line come the race leaders, and it's 0.7 of a second, but Kylwitz is lapping quicker than the two ahead of him. You see, Ludwig's stuck. He can't find a way past Schneider because there's no grip and there's no visibility. And Kylwitz is going to have the same problem in a minute. He's going to get up with the two Mercedes, and then he's going to have to sit in this shower. Here, coming over the timing line, great battle going on as you look back from Klaus Bachler's Porsche, and that is Van der Linde getting ahead, and that is Sandstrom, who's off the road. Edward Sandstrom has spun coming out of La Source. Now Sandstrom was 6th, but you've just seen Van der Linde get ahead of Diego Alessi, and Alessi fights back going through La Source, and the Corvette retakes the place.
I think the Corvette, and that will be down to the grunt that car has got.
How did Sandstrom spin? Duffed up by his teammate. Hashtag schoolboy error, that. Dear oh dear. Won't go down very well, will it?
No, that was unnecessary, to say the least.
So Edward Sandstrom has to try and sort himself out and rejoin, and he does so now. Just look at how much time he's lost. Yeah. Now we have just under 13 minutes before the pit window opens. We know that it will open now at 12:53 and 2 seconds. And the incident between Sandstrom and the aggressor, Mark Basseng, is under investigation. And Basseng should know better than doing things like that. He's another experienced driver.
So, whilst we were watching that and the replays of that incident, Bernd Schneider is untroubled at the front because the charge and challenge from Ludwig just for the moment has gone away. Calvert's still the quicker of the 3. Certainly last time around he was. Just see Daniel Calvert's into the back of the picture. Yes, there in the Corvette.
Schneider, Ludwig, Calvert are all lapping in the 2:42s. After that, it's 2:45 or slower. These are the cars for the wet, unquestionably. Everything else is a real nervous handful.
Yes, very twitchy, very difficult to control.
And there is a bit of a wobble from another of the Corvettes. That is the Sven Barth car, but it's just fending off Rahel Frey in the Audi. But the Audi's not having such a good run in this, although Rahel Frey fights back, in fairness, coming out of Lecombe up the inside. That's a pretty bold effort, and is it going to pay off? Not quite. The Corvette is able to get the grunt and therefore stay ahead. Good racing between these two. Rahel Frey, then, former DTM racer, accelerates towards Blanchimont, where it is horrible. Look at that. Just look at the way the water hangs in the air. That's the problem. It's the spray as well as the rain.
Now that Corvette, the GWIT Racing Corvette, team run by Gerd Beisel. Different Corvette to the one that we're seeing in P3, or run by a different team. Of course, the car's the same, Corvette Z06. And therefore will have the same torque properties that you were saying is so advantageous.
Now, a car that really is struggling in these conditions as a brand is the Bentley, because Hamprecht is 16th and Bleekemolen is last. Your own Bleekemolen is no muppet. He should not be last. And Hamprecht's car yesterday, when Clement Schmidt drove it, did the fastest lap of the race. The Bentleys seemingly do not like these conditions at all.
So there is the...
Now there, interestingly, down the pit lane comes comes Hamprecht. That's the 8 Bentley. Bang. Demolishes the stop sign. And they go to look at the left rear corner.
They're concerned there, aren't they?
Yeah, like the driver might have radioed in to say it feels like there's a wobbly wheel. Checking everything, but I think that's just the fact that the car hates the conditions. The safety car is deployed. The safety car is deployed. Is that because of the weather? Or do we have a car off the road? The safety car is deployed. I'm struggling to think of anybody else that's gone missing.
There is the safety car out then. Yeah, you're right. We've not seen, and there's nothing on the timing screen that would, you know, other than Hamprecht in the pit. Strauss never started the race.
See, this is a problem. If
the rain is abating now.
Let's have a look at Lecombe. Oh, it's Bachler. Bachler's spun. And off he goes. And I would suspect... I was going to say he's stuck on the grass, but no, he gets the car going again. So that's not the reason for the safety car, although he very nearly got nailed by Sven Bart, who arrived on the scene and nearly blitzed him. But they get away with that. So... it looks as though it could be because of the conditions. And what I was going to say was, if you deploy a safety car for the weather, but the weather doesn't improve, you're then stuck with having the safety car on track. Because if it's bad enough to bring it out, it's going to, you know, how do you bring it in, if you're with me?
But I don't, you know, actually...
That was very close, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very close. Sorry. Apart from that little incident which we're seeing there, there's been no...
Now there's consternation because the safety car has picked up the wrong car. Hamprecht has just come out of the pit lane, and he needs to be waved by. The green light goes on, and now he's unable to go by. That's fine, that's good.
I was going to go on to say,
sorry, yes,
that in the conditions that we've seen, actually, remarkably, there have been very little incidents, very few incidents.
There've been this one.
Other than,
but nothing silly, nothing major. And cars aren't strewn around the circuit.
And the...
and I think it stopped raining on
it
the
has.
start line,
It's certainly abated, and I said that just a few moments ago. So, yeah, I'm a little bit bemused by that.
I can only assume that it's the amount of spray that the race director feels is dangerous, and he's therefore neutralised the race. But you know, if it carries on raining, you're still going to get spray. So if it's dangerous enough now to neutralise the race, it's hard to get to the point where it becomes safe to restart, if you will.
Yes. So here's Bernd Schneider, then race leader, who will be collected by the safety car. And where were we in terms of the pit window? Not many minutes away, were we?
No, it's just under 8 now.
Well,
I can only offer you that it's because of the conditions. But unless the conditions abate, how do you restart?
But the conditions have not really, you know, they've remained constant, haven't they? It hasn't got progressively worse, I don't think, has it?
But, the only way I would argue in that is that we had standing water and it's rained, so there's more standing water.
Right, yes.
There is that to factor in. But you are absolutely right. We're not having lap after lap of cars spearing off the circuit. I thought driving standards were exemplary in those conditions, largely.
Bosh.
Yeah, but, you know, we aren't having people in the wall, in the gravel,
no,
the wrong way. You know, look, there's been battling, there's been overtaking. Unless there's something that we haven't seen.
Absolutely, that's the other consideration. That is the other consideration, if there's something that we haven't seen. But then the timing screen wouldn't indicate that.
No, exactly. You know, there's a disparity in lap times, but that's the disparity in driver's pace and visibility forcing you to go slower. So, I can only assume because of the weather. That's the car of Alfred Renau that you're looking at. And this is looking back from Backler at Kelvin van der Linde. Tries to come in without knocking, doesn't he?
Yes, he does a bit.
And you've got Diego Alessi there in the Corvette running with them. Klaus Ludwig has a deep breath.
That was an exhale, wasn't it?
Oh, was it ever? That's the Sledecka BMW that went off before the race started. Fastest lap, sorry, the least slow lap is that of Bernd Schneider at 2:41, and now we're behind the safety car. Of course, everything slows right down, but for my money on the start line, it stopped raining and it's certainly brightening up.
Well, the order is Schneider, Ludwig, Kravitz, Olsen, then it's Baumann. The top 5, and the car's being led around by the safety car. As you can see, the clock continues to count down. We're into 31 minutes left of the race. Safety car is coming in this lap, David. Now, either I'm missing something, or I don't really understand what that has done, because the conditions haven't changed drastically.
Unless it was a knee-jerk call when the Porsche went off, and the call came before it was apparent that the car could drive away, I'm struggling to offer you any other solution other than the weather. But you're right, I'm not sure what it's achieved by neutralising the race for a lap. If anything, you could argue it's made it more dangerous, because you've now got everybody bunched up again.
Yeah.
I'm a bit puzzled by that one, but anyway, here we go. Hold on to your hats.
Now, Ludwig.
Mercedes are nose to tail.
Ludwig is going to sense an opportunity here, isn't he, before the pit window opens, to try and get ahead of Bernd Schneider. I think it's going to be a big ask, but we will see. As the race resumes then, with exactly 30 minutes left to run, Bernd Schneider leads from Luca Ludwig. The big winner, and of course, in all of this, perhaps, is Daniel Kravitz, who now is on the back of the pair of Mercedes.
Another winner is Basseng, because he's just got past Baumann, hasn't he, going into La Source? That's Baumann's view, and that's Basseng up the road ahead of him now. And Baumann, not only has he got the spray, he's also got the condensation in the windscreen. That's misting up as well. You're going to find, I think, at the pit stops, a lot of rubbing of the windscreen inside, because visibility is now well nigh impossible, and that's another reason why Baumann's dropping back, because he can't see anything.
So we're on board with the race-leading HP racing car of Bernd Schneider. We saw images of Harry Prochik in the garage. Still raining at that side of the circuit. Certainly not raining here, where our comms booth is located.
Ralph Fry has another go at Sven Bart, and this time makes it work, so the Audi goes ahead. That's been in the post for a few laps, hasn't it, that move, and it's finally happened. Now Ralph Fry goes through.
The one that's looking very lively in that little pack just ahead of them is Kelvin van der Linde.
Yeah, and that van der Linde car, as we said earlier on, is the repaired car after yesterday. It was curious because it drove back to the pits but was never seen again, so it's hard to assess exactly how much damage there had been. Still, Schneider leads the way. Now, if you go back to yesterday and you look at the relative pace of the drivers, that car is on borrowed time, isn't it? Because there's no way on yesterday's evidence that Prochik is going to be able to match Sebastian Asch.
I agree.
The Zach Speed Mercedes could be on for its first win of the year here. 28 minutes of the race remain, and there are 2 minutes before the pit window opens as of now.
So the pit window having moved, of course, by dint of the change in restoration.
And it means that they, at the end of the next lap, will be able to pit. We've got this, and during the next lap, the pit window will open. And still, as you can see, the weather conditions are horrible. Looking then back from the Porsche as the cars come up to the bus stop. Dominic Baumann gets out of the spray. He's coming under attack as well, isn't he? Christopher Jons in the Audi is the next one. Over the timing line they come. Schneider leading then by 6/10 from Luca Ludwig in third place, and actually dropping back a bit is Kyle Beats this time.
Yes,
Uwe Altzen is fourth but dropping back, and then fifth is Mark Basseng. Sixth and seventh absolutely nose to tail. Baumann versus the Audi in the hands of, in fact, Nicky Thiem, who is working his way up the order, and he's about to make a move. Yes, as they drop downhill towards Eau Rouge. This is the best we've seen of Nicky Thiem all weekend. He was oh so subdued yesterday. This is time for a sharp intake of breath. He puts Baumann up on the curb and the Audi goes through. Baumann sits in the spray, but Nicky Thiem going very strongly now, picking them off. That puts him up into the top 6. Now, Nicky Thiem shares with Jordan Pepper, doesn't he? Last year's Sirocco R Cup winner. Interesting combination of drivers. Look at the spray again. It is horrible out there. And you have to say, all of those that have kept it in the right direction for this stint deserve big congratulations.
I think the apt thought process behind pairing Nicky Thiem with Jordan Lee Pepper was hopefully to replicate the success of the year before with Kelvin van der Linde with the very experienced René Rast. It's not quite played out that way yet, but we've still got plenty of racing to come in the season. So,
pit window's open. So as I say, on this lap, they'll be able to pit come the end. How many people will get into the pits remains to be seen, because of course these, the faster drivers, want to stay out as long as they can. What you need to look at really are the evenly matched combinations. Asch and Ludwig are evenly matched, Hertgen and Altzen are evenly matched, and Klingmann and Baumann are evenly matched. So they could pit this time around. It won't make much difference. They're not going to lose anything by forsaking a lap out of this driver's stint, in other words.
Okay. So we look back at the Audi, there's still plenty of spray being thrown up. We're on the board the BMW of Dominic Baumann, and the camera there really struggling on the back of Dominic Baumann's car. And again, the conditions are different at certain parts of the track, David. I'm sure of that.
Absolutely.
Look at the spray there, and then compare that to where we are on the main straight.
And I'll tell you what, after his pit stop, Fabian Hamprecht in the 8 Bentley is absolutely flying because he's done a personal best lap and he's on the pace of the 2 race leaders.
Wow.
And that's possibly now going to suggest that he might be able to make a bit of progress before the very end, and then he can give the car to Clemens Schmidt for the second stint. In comes Uwe Altzen, in comes Dominic Baumann, and in also has come Luca Ludwig. So Ludwig in. Now it's a battle of the teams in the pit lane. The pit stop has to be 65 seconds. So you can't gain anything, but you can lose either if you make a mistake and it becomes a slower stop, or if you make a mistake on the stopwatch and you have to come back in for a penalty to make up the shortfall. Also in the background came Klaus Bachler to give way to Martin Raginger in a car that's looked really undercooked in this stint.
As you say, lots of work going on the windscreen as well.
Yeah. Inside and out, try and get rid of the condensation. Engine fires up on the Mercedes, and doors closed on the BMW. Dominic Baumann says, oh, thank heavens that's over. And away goes Claudia Hürtgen behind Sebastian Asch, so that is all as it should be. And then Jens Klingmann will join the queue next, ahead of Martin Raginger. And Luca Ludwig goes and talks to his dad. They all talk about the good battle he had with Schneider and what a good defensive job Ben Schneider did. But importantly, Luca Ludwig did not make any mistakes.
No.
Of course, he's a young driver. He's done a lot of racing, but relatively speaking, compared to Ben Schneider, he's a mere whippersnapper.
So those 2 cars rejoin then.
Can I tell you that Jeroen Bleekemolen has come in to give way to Luca Stoltz in a car that's had a win this year, but has been running in 19th place for the bulk of the race. It got 18th after the sister car pitted. This is an awful day for Bentley for whatever reason.
We're on board with Claudia Hürtgen then, who has taken over the driving of this Tim Schubert BMW Z4 from Uwe Olsen. Oh, and that as she explores the limits of the adhesion available on the track. And that proves the point, doesn't it? Now,
Tell you something else that's being proved is that when you're not in spray, how much quicker you can go. Look at Kylvitz now, because he's so much closer to Schneider. He's had clear road because Ludwig pitted. Suddenly the visibility has come back to him, so he's able to push, and then he gets into this kind of blockage situation where he can't see because of the spray generated by the race leader.
So there is Bernd Schneider, who doesn't come in this time, nor does Daniel Kylvitz. No. Those two staying out there. Got 22 minutes of the race left to run, a race that has been really rather affected by the weather. Now, this is a replay of the back end of the BMW of Claudia Hürtgen. Did well to control that, to be fair.
Yeah, indeed. In slow motion, it doesn't actually look that bad, but it's real heart-in-mouth stuff when you suddenly have the car aquaplane like that. So this is the lead situation. It is Bernd Schneider ahead of Daniel Kylvitz, who last time through did the fastest lap of the race because he had some visibility, and he's now inching up onto the back of Schneider, as in has come Kelvin van der Linde to give way to Stefan Wackerbauer. And Wackerbauer was the man that
binned it.
Lost in his copybook, I was going to say yesterday, but yes, binned it is a good motor racing term. Meanwhile, at MRS, the surviving car is serving its mandatory stop. This is 22, which means that Dominic Joest gives way to Florian Scholzer.
It's Harry Prochik then.
Now, he's got a lot of pressure here because Schneider has teed him up beautifully. Prochik's got to deliver, and effectively it's going to be between Prochik and Sebastian Asch, isn't it? With all due deference to Andreas Wirth, he ain't as quick as Daniel Kylvitz, who a few years ago was very quick in the FIA GT3 European Championship, the late lamented, and it comes then now down towards Poum. Look how quicker than Schneider he is. He's got himself right onto the back of the Mercedes and then is stuck.
Yes, then is stuck.
You either force a mistake out of Schneider, very difficult to do.
I was going to say, they're not commonplace.
No, you go offline to overtake where it's even wetter and there's less traction, so that doesn't happen for you, or you have to do it on the pit stops. But even if he stays out a lap after Schneider,
handing it over to a...
Well, one, he risks missing the pit window closing.
Yes.
Two, he's only got really one opportunity to do a qualifying lap, and the pressure on means you could make a mistake yourself. So this is a bad situation really for Calvitz. He's done all he can, but again, the rain you see is at such a volume that it's affecting him. That said, this section of the circuit, I think, is looking a bit better.
Well, we've been saying for, quite a few minutes where we're situated, where the comms booth is, there is no rain now. And there's Andreas Wirth.
What we don't know is how much of that is just spray or if it's still being added to by the rain. But I think there's less spray. And Schneider goes a little bit deep, in fact, into the bus stop. And Calvitz goes with him to stay out for another lap then. The pit window will close in just over 3 minutes' time. So they've got at least this lap.
This lap, really, isn't it?
Side by side for the lead. Calvitz has a go on the outside line at La Source. Wide in, tight out. There's the gap on the inside. Has he got the grunt? Yes, he has! Calvitz goes through. Great move. He's managed to outfox the old master. Into the lead of the race goes Daniel Calvitz. He takes over the race lead, and the team is absolutely wrapped with that, understandably. And Calvitz now has got one shot at being able to try to pull away, and he is doing so.
That was a fantastic move, wasn't it? Outfox the old fox, as you so rightly said. And now, as we see this is where he keyed it up, really, wasn't it? So outside, and that was always going to give him the potential of the inside there, where we've seen the Corvette has the grunt, it has the torque. And through Daniel Calvitz's vent, and the delight in the team garage as that car now leads. The point David has made is that car will be driven by Andreas Wirth in the next stint. And we're thinking that both Calvitz and Schneider are going to have to come in at the end of this lap, rather than risk missing the pit window.
I tell you what, it is definitely getting drier, because don't forget the cars now are going into the hands of, in theory, the lesser graded driver. Well, Sebastian Asch has just done a lap time in the Zack-Speed Mercedes. There he is, quicker than anything Luca Ludwig did while he was stuck behind Bert Schneider.
Right.
The track conditions are starting to improve a little bit. Claudia Hertgen has done a lap time better than Uwe Alsen. Jens Klingmann has done a lap time better than Dominic Baumann. Part of this might be because they're in clear air and have got some visibility, but equally the road, I think, is getting a little bit drier. Won't be dry enough for slicks, don't worry about that. They'll have to stay on wets to the end, but things are just improving a tad.
Just look at the gap that Calvitz has been able to, again, part of that is visibility, isn't it? And Schneider, of course, has got all the spray being thrown at him now. So there is Schneider, but this is our new race leader, Daniel Calvitz, in the Callaway Competition Corvette. Now, for my money, I think he will pit now.
He's got to, because the pit lane will close in less than a minute. He's got no option, and Schneider's in with him as well.
Okay, so strategist alongside me is at work. And the team go to work. Out comes Daniel Calvitz, in goes Andreas Wirth.
Also in his Nicky team, also in his Christo Jons. So that means your top four are all into the pit lane. And that's going to potentially put into the lead the Florian Stoll, Marc Basseng Audi, which has pitted, hasn't it? I pitted early.
Okay, we go to split screen then.
This is the car to keep an eye to as well, the Zack-Speed Mercedes, to see what the gap's going to be when that comes over the timing line. And there, Prochik gets the lead back on the pit stops. Now, does that suggest that somebody's stop was a little bit shorter, or does it suggest that the Corvette was a little bit sluggish away? They came in the reverse order. Something has obviously been not quite right on the timings from both teams. There's the Mercedes, which comes across the timing line now, 59.2 seconds back, less the pit stop time. And so, in other words, that car is very definitely in the hunt. You can see now it is a three-way fight between these cars. And Asch is quicker than the two ahead of him.
So Prochik then out ahead of the Corvette, driven now by Andreas Wirth. There is Bernd Schneider. Pit window is now closed. Number 42 is under investigation. Now that is that car, the Project Schneider Mercedes.
That's what I said. Somebody's stop was either long or somebody's stop was short for the positions to reverse. And because it came in second place, and it's got a 1 second time penalty.
No!
It was short by 1 second, and that is how you can lose races on this with clumsy pit work. A 1 second time penalty.
Whose fault is that?
Car controller. It's not the driver.
It's the
It's
team,
not the driver.
isn't it?
The team has to factor in the time of the pit stop and the speed at which you drive down the pit lane, and therefore work out when to release the car. It's the team that control it. The driver obeys the pit lane speed limit, should do, but it's down to the team to control that pit stop and to release the car with enough time and the correct amount of time. You could also argue that wasn't a safe release as well.
Yes.
But to me, that's down to the team. That's down to the car controller. And Ben Schneider, with a rueful smile, thinks, well, I did my bit. I led the race. Couldn't do much more, could I?
So this car being driven now by Harry Prochik is going to have to come in and serve a 1 second time penalty.
Clumsy pit work. Clumsy pit work. It can happen, but it's clumsy.
Right, look at the Sebastian Ash car.
What, the winner?
Oh, all right.
Well, he's going to get past the Corvette very, very soon, isn't he? Because on pace alone, he's much, much faster than Andreas Wirth. And here is a car that's bound for the pit lane with its penalty. So you've got Schneider now Prochik now turning his way through the bus stop. And a drive-through penalty as well for car number 100, which is now Daniel Dobic for an unsafe release. There's the time penalty to 42. Message gets through. So it's an unsafe release for the 100 Audi as the three leaders then go through, and Prochik to Ash, 2 seconds.
Well, I'm very, very surprised that the team made that error. And there is Bernd Schneider, who, as you rightly said, had done his part, hadn't he?
Yeah. But you can't necessarily say that it was down to the driver going too quickly, because he pulled out and was ahead. So, he went when the team told him. Therefore, it had to be down to the team to release him at the wrong time, not the driver's leaden foot being too fast down the pit lane. The move was done, wasn't it?
So whilst Prochik leads, it's a nominal lead because he's got to come in and serve that 1 second time penalty, which of course is going to add an awful lot more time. Oh! And there's a problem. Yes, Claudio Hürtgen's BMW.
And that gives Jens Klingmann a chance to go round the outside, fighting for adhesion, but Klingmann goes through and moves up into 7th place. And all that was triggered by Claudia Hürtgen making a mistake, but Claudia is right back on the case, isn't she? Down towards Bruxelles, tries to go around the outside, no can do.
So on board with Claudia Hürtgen then as she's fighting to find her way back past Jens Klingmann. So Klingmann puts his foot down now, and of course Claudia Hürtgen now gets mired in the spray that's being chucked up from the car in front. But as David has made the point, the spray that's being kicked up now is much less than it was. Much less than it was. Although, ironically, here, where our comms booth is located, it is beginning to rain once again. So,
oh, joy. Oh, wonderful. I am thrilled with this news.
Sorry. On board, we stay on board with the Sports Trophy Team Schubert and the Z4 GT3. And there we can see Klingmann is well ahead now. And of course, Claudia Hürtgen having just to avoid the spray. And that's where Claudia Hürtgen made that mistake, and Jens Klingmann was able to benefit from that. Claudia Hürtgen did try and fight back, but it was the off that gave the opportunity there to Jens Klingmann to move up a further place in the order by dint of that mistake by Claudia Hürtgen in the BMW. Well, Prochik still has not come in, but now, right on the back of the Corvette, David, is, as you have said, the race winner. Confidently. I'm
trying to work out, though, how Ash gets past Andreas Wirth, because we know how difficult it is to find a way through. He's got the speed. I think he's going to have to force a mistake out of Andreas. We have an incident between number 13, which is Remo Lips, and 16, Philip Geipel, being reported to the stewards. We have Prochik still to serve the time penalty. We've got 9.5 minutes to go. He's up at Les Combes, where it's definitely improving.
Yes. And in fairness, the rain that was falling outside our comms booth has now stopped.
Right, okay. And Les Combes is at one of the highest points of the circuit. That's a real drag uphill. So you're almost in the clouds when you get there. Sebastian Ash looks on, goes down towards Bruxelles. Comes Sebastian at the wheel of the Mercedes, still on the back of Andreas Wirth, who is doing a decent job here, you've got to say, of defending. Pressure is on after Daniel Kylevit's stint. And how does Sebastian Ash find a way through? He's got to try and force that car to put a wheel out of line, hasn't he?
So the car that you see there leading, Prochik 42. Actually, it's a nominal lead because it's going to have to come in and serve a 1 second time penalty, which means that the lead is with the Corvette, but it is being hounded now by Sebastian Ash, who's every which way across that car, gets alongside the Corvette now if he's able to maintain this commitment. Sebastian Ash, well, effectively takes up the lead of the race now.
Very bold stuff, that, and the team responds in the right way, because that was very, very brave, and they lent on each other to a degree, but that was committed stuff by Sebastian Ash, and look at him get away now.
Whilst the graphics on the left-hand side of your screen will indicate that Ash is P2, when you factor in the fact that the car ahead, the Prochik car, is going to have to come in for that time penalty, the lead will go, as predicted by my friend alongside me, to Sebastian Ash.
And this, therefore, will be that car's first win of the season for him and for Luca Ludwig. But, first of all, Prochik, who is being gobbled up anyway, look, because the gap is all but gone. He's got to take the penalty, and this is it. Into the lead goes the Zach Speed Mercedes. There you are. Job done. Wallet, Mrs. Cox. Your mother's won a duck.
Going into this, they had a 7-point advantage in the points. Well, that advantage is going to be increased still further. Well, there. How disappointing is that to have to serve that for 1 second?
Oh, I know.
Somebody in the team is going to be told off about that.
Yeah, they're the former employee of the team, aren't they? Yeah, they're the one on the way out now with the rucksack and the P45, whatever the equivalent is. So, Sebastian Ash leads the way. Now, we're not done yet. We're not done yet, because in third place is Florian Stoll in number 24 Audi, and that car has just done a personal best lap of the race, and Stoll is lapping quicker than the leader. Now, the race leader, of course, did lose out last time by being stuck in traffic, but certainly Stoll is lapping quicker by nearly 2 seconds a lap than Andreas Wirth. He's 5 seconds back. There's time to catch him. You're on board with Prochik, who is behind Geipel, so that's putting him in 9th place.
9th place. Fair point.
And this was the move that put Ash into the lead, round the outside, found the traction on the outside line, which is crucial to all of that. Found a puddle, just avoided that, but he was committed, and Andreas Wirth realised that Ash was coming through. Yes, says his dad, that'll do for me. And this in replay, Prochik coming in to serve the time penalty. Stopped, he goes. A time penalty does seem remarkably like a stop-go penalty, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's the same, isn't it? I think, almost. All that because of a 1 second mistake in terms of his release.
Do you know what? Over at the start line, it is almost time to put your sunnies back on. It is getting much, much brighter again over here, and the drivers having to contend with far less spray.
Oh, I agree.
Still tricky, still treacherous, still not nice, but it's massively improved. Quirky old race, eh?
Just a bit. Race that didn't quite start as expected, that's for sure.
Didn't quite start, really.
No, it didn't quite start, that's fair. Sebastian Ash then, who leads, and referred to the point I made earlier, going into this race, they led in the points table. We have 5 minutes and a few seconds left to run. There is the P2 car of Andreas Wirth, the Corvette. And then the Audi.
Of Florian Stoll, which last time managed to take a couple of seconds out of the margin, and this time takes 1 second out, so it's down to 5.5 seconds. Nothing motivates you more than being able to see the car you're chasing, and so Florian Stoll now is really going to be on it.
And whilst he can get onto the back of those cars, he's got to go round them.
Yes. Catching is one thing, passing is quite another, to trot out an old cliche. There is Harry Protchik, who is now in 9th spot. And he's under pressure. He's about to become 10th, isn't he? Because Martin Ragginger, former 24-hour winner, is up with him.
So they're side by side, or we think they are. There's a lift there, wasn't there? Because the Porsche was coming through.
Yeah, in fairness to Harry Protchik, he's not a bad driver, but you just put him up against other people, and you start to see the pecking order of ability. You know, he's not appalling by any means, but he's just not as good as others. And this is inevitably one of the situations in this type of racing where you have to factor in the differing speeds of co-drivers. Yeah, he's better than many.
Yes.
He's still in the top 10, but he's not as good as others.
So then, Florian Stoll is that we're watching in P3, who is lapping quicker than the two ahead of him. There is Harry Protchik then, who, having served that stop-go or time penalty, call it what you will, is now behind the Porsche of Backler, so he's running P10 now. Up front, it's Ash, and there is Sebastian Ash in the Zach Speed Mercedes-Benz. Super slow-mo of that car as it navigates and rudders its way through the water, which is much less now than it was.
But isn't that a car sure-footed in the wet, just like the Corvette? And as I said early on in the race, a lot of that is down to the fact that it's got a lot of torque and it's not as susceptible to wheel spin. Comes then up now through the left at Blanchimont, being pursued still by Andreas Wirth, who is being caught still by this man, Florian Stoll, as they work their way out of Blanchimont, then up towards the bus stop. But it'll be the last lap this time, so I don't think Stoll is going to get there in time, is he? He'll be close, but he won't get there.
I think you're right.
And what else is going on lower down the order? There you've got in 4th place Jordan Pepper.
And that actually is P4, and that's down to the hard work of Nicky Thiem in the first stint, isn't it?
Yeah.
We were saying earlier, Nicky Thiem was a little bit anonymous yesterday, but has shown well in these conditions, that's for sure. And Jordan Pepper, of course, like Kelvin van der Linde, another one from the Christian Abt team, Sirocco R-Cup champion last year, and also from South Africa. And
then in 5th place, you've got Jens Klingman, who dominated with Dominic Baumann yesterday's race, but that BMW doesn't like the wet as much and has really struggled in this race. 5th ain't bad. 6th is now the car that Christer Jons started, and he's being driven by Andreas Weishaupt. 7th is Claudia Hurtgen. 8th is Philipp Geipel. 9th is Martin Ragginger. And down to 10th, as we saw, is Harry Protchik. But the first victory of the season is going to come in the worst conditions of the season. Luca Ludwig did a great job in the first stint, and Sebastian Ash, you've got to say, has got good, ruthless racecraft, the way that he sorted out the Corvette, and they are on target for Zach Speed and Mercedes to take a win.
So we are on the last lap here at Spa, the ADAC GT Masters. It's the second race of the weekend in weather conditions. Well, always thought in yesterday's race it looked like it could rain, but it didn't. In this race it has, and it affected the very start of the race, and it has affected the race since. We had a safety car deployment, which we can only think was because of weather conditions. Well, it's all played into the hands of that Zach Speed Mercedes-Benz, which has certainly performed in very challenging conditions. Sebastian Ash, Luca Ludwig, the drivers in that Zach Speed car, went into this the top of the points chart, and are certainly going to come out the other end in the same place with a slightly healthier points advantage.
The next stop is the Lausitz Ring, and they will go there, of course, with the maximum success ballast. So that's going to be a very heavy Mercedes. One of the ways they've been doing so well in the championship this year has been keeping away almost from wins and the maximum weight and taking the points, which is a very clever way of doing it. But in these conditions, the Mercedes unstoppable. And look, we're going to end in the sunshine. The cloud is lifting. There's a break above us. The sun is trying to burst through. And that has been almost like a microcosm of 24 hours. Spa is in the background. Vert gets it all wrong into the bus stop and outbrakes himself. It's a win for Mercedes.
Sebastian Ash and Luca Ludwig victorious here at Spa in a really, really weather-affected race. P2 goes the way of Andreas Vert and Daniel Karvitz. There's Roland Ash, who's absolutely delighted. Florian Stoll and Mark Baseng take P3. It's Jordan Pepper and Nicky Tim that take P4. And across the line goes the Schützer Motorsport Porsche 911. There is Luca Ludwig. And as David was saying, the success has come by virtue of the consistency of points scores rather than race wins, this being the first win of the season. So Luca Ludwig very, very happy with, and he certainly did a good job in what was a very, very difficult first stint, David.
And didn't put a wheel wrong. You know, he's a young guy. He was up against one of the L Masters in dreadful conditions, but did everything that was asked of him. He didn't do anything rash. He didn't put himself into a situation where he could be in trouble, could risk damage or going off the road. And an impressive stint. And you have to take your hat off to Bernd Schneider. I know I keep banging on about him, but the guy's up against much younger drivers. You could argue, isn't a full-time professional racer, although he does seem to do a huge amount of racing these days. He's completely at one with a Mercedes product. And once again, he just, like a light bulb, you know, screw him in, flick him on, turn the switch, and he just delivers. Fabulous lap times, pole position for the race, led virtually all of his stint. Top job by Bernd Schneider. And 10th, you could argue, poor reward. But what a result for Luca Ludwig and Sebastian Ash, two racing dynasties that continue. And of course, Zakspeed is a long German motorsport tradition, started by Eric, continued by Peter Zakowski.
Just wonder when you're describing the Ludwig-Schneider partnership, when, you know, we saw Klaus Ludwig in the garage, how much he would be thinking just quietly to himself, I wish I was in that car.
He does do the odd bit of historic racing.
Oh, does he?
Still, Klaus.
Okay.
He had a spell a few years ago in the GT3 European Championship, and he was a bronze driver, believe it or not, after all he's achieved because of his age.
Okay.
But he doesn't do very much these days other than the odd historic race, yeah.
Here's the result then. Ash Ludwig taking the win from Vert and Karvitz P2. Then it was Stoll and Baseng, Lee Pepper and team, Klingman, Baumann, Hürken, Olsen, Geipel, Frey, Raginger, Backler, Weishaupt, Jons and Prochik, and Schneider then P10. The rest of the order on screen for you, but the top 10 there, and we'll be going up to the podium very, very soon. And there are going to be 6 very happy drivers up there on the podium. I just cannot explain how remarkable the weather conditions are, because you could almost go out and sunbathe now.
But if you want one word to describe the weather, Spa.
Yes.
Because it's very Spa how it's been today. And the teams now must think, you know, if we had a race at 2 o'clock, we wouldn't have had half of those worries. But as it's turned out, it is now a Spa in the sunshine. The drivers will make their way to the podium. And just pity the poor drivers that are out next, because they're the teenagers in the ADAC F4 Championship who've got to contend with the slippery track. But there are interviews to be done, there are photographs to be taken, there's a podium ceremony to come as well for the drivers in the ADAC GT Masters. Race 6 of the championship year. And Germany's motor racing dynasties of Zakspeed, of Ash and of Ludwig continue to make their mark through GT racing. Klaus Ludwig, who of course was a Le Mans winner, he was successful in FIA GT, in the DRM as well as the DTM, and now watches his son take a win. 3rd place to Florian Stoll and Mark Baseng. 2nd place, a very good result, you've got to say this as well. Daniel Karvitz did a mega first stint, and Andreas Vert brought it home well for 2nd spot, but a race win for Luca Ludwig and Sebastian Ash.
I think Karvitz is a talent. I really do.
And has specialised in Corvettes, in GT3 trim for many, many years now. in a sense, it's hard to know just how good he is because you've not seen him in anything
Else, right.
really. But in that car, in those conditions, you can't argue with the job that he did, can you?
No.
You know, he actually got himself up past Bert Schneider, which is something that Ludwig hadn't done. So the drivers will go to the podium, and the next round of the championship will take them to the Lausitzring, then the Nürburgring, Sachsenring, Zandvoort, and it will finish at Hockenheim at the end of the season. Early October is when it will go to Hockenheim, and hopefully it's going to be a championship decided in race 2 there.
Yes.
The way that the wins have been scattered about with a different winner in every race suggests it's going to go down to the wire.
I have to say, and that's what I find really, really attractive about the GT Masters, because, you know, you look through the pack, and as you say, the number of different wins there have been already this season, and you know, so much talent through the order. Then I think you're probably right. It might be race 2 at Hockenheim, which you will be talking about and describing the championship winner this year.
And I shall look forward to it. So, GT racing, so many championships around the globe, all of which deliver great racing, spectacular cars, and a home for very good drivers as well.
Well, I don't know quite what it will have done to where we're at, because there's a lot of racing going on here at Spa this weekend, and we've just seen the GT Masters. It's the turn of the ADAC Young Stars next, who will be out in the ADAC Formula 4, which of course is the is what has followed the ADAC Formula, and their race was due on track inside 4 minutes, and we haven't even had the podium for the GT Masters, so I suspect that that isn't going to be the case, although we can see the teams from our vantage point going out there. We still have the podium for the GT Masters to come, so I would think that potentially the Formula 4, ADAC Formula 4 race will be, start will be delayed, but we await further news. Meantime, there are the winners in the GT Masters, or P1, P2 and P3 in the ADAC GT Masters, having the photo taken before heading up towards the podium. Very proud of what they achieved in really horrible conditions.
No argument about that, absolutely.
Satina clock tells the story of it very nearly being 1:30 local time, which was when the ADAC Formula 4 race was supposed to be shown the green flag. And as we look at the stars in the GT Masters, we have the young whippersnappers, if you like, and the single-seaters next in what are also going to be equally challenging conditions for them. Oh, great.
Yes, the race director is, at this very moment, taking his Valium in anticipation of what happens next. And, of course, it's 30 minutes for the young Chargers, assuming it's a full race duration. Bearing in mind now the way the timetable's been affected, it could be reduced a little, but we'll wait and find out for sure about that as the teams in the pit lane get themselves ready for the podium ceremony. But, yes, the F4 teams are getting prepared for the second race of the weekend. As the podium, all is being made ready.
Not far away, I wouldn't have thought, from the podium ceremony now. Drivers being hustled up the stairs. It's not far from where the photographs are taken to the podium, which is, you know, just a few doors down to the left of our commentary booth here at Spa. So we await. ADAC GT Masters off to the Lausitzring next. And here at Spa, where the weather conditions certainly played into that race, and some testament to the driver's control of the conditions that very nearly all the cars finished. So we look down at the paddock here. Of course, the GT Masters drivers have media commitments as soon as they've jumped out of the car, which also delays the podium a little bit. It's unbelievable how the weather in the space of an hour has changed from one thing
like a different day, isn't it?
to another, and then back again.
Yeah.
Absolutely extraordinary. Callaway competition, Corvette then, having done a great job. Did half wonder whether we might see the Z07 this year in GT Masters. But hasn't yet.
See, if you've invested in a Z06 and it's still competitive,
Which it is.
might as well stay with it, yeah. Because they're not cheap GT3 cars. And one of the things that the manufacturers are discouraged from doing is to do annual upgrades. Audi, for example, has brought out the second generation R8 LMS Ultra.
Yes.
Hit the tracks this year. And that therefore means that everybody else has to respond accordingly, because they need to find more pace, more performance, better aero potentially in their own cars. And those bills all add up. It was one of the downfalls of super touring racing many, many years ago. The costs spent on aero kits year on year on year. And GT racing is keen not to go the same way. There is, of course, the FIA's GT Commission that looks at these things very closely. So the drivers, it's not the work of a moment, is it, getting them up to the podium?
And a lot of this is the huge media interest there is in the drivers as soon as they finish the race, where they're hustled off to get immediate reaction, and that always plays a part in delaying the podium. But I did half wonder with the fact that they want the F4 race underway. Just saw Carsten Molitor to the left-hand side of the picture momentarily. The MRS GT team haven't had a brilliant weekend.
No, one car didn't even get into that second race, did it? Big frustration there.
So everyone huddled below the podium, ready for the podium. I would think from the noise that we can hear from below us that the Formula 4 cars are being released from the pit lane to make their way out to their grid. Being told by my director, podium in 1 minute.
And just a reminder of how wet it was during the course of that race, with the amount of water and the spray that was kicked up into the air. This is how the championship now looks. Ash and Ludwig 28 points ahead of a very subdued Klaus Battler from race 2. Really disappointing race for Blekemolen and Stolz, who fall away. Thomas Enger wasn't here this weekend. Dominic Baumann and Jens Klingmann had a win, and so they're tied on points with Enger. But at the moment, that Zach Speed Mercedes is scampering away.
Yes. It was last time around, of course, at the Red Bull Ring, it was a bit of a Lamborghini fest. And
yes, the Huracan was away at Paul Ricard this weekend, and the Gallardo broke in qualifying 1 on Friday with 2 Australian drivers who've had a really worthwhile trip. Big frustration all round.
Yes, Thomas Enger not here this weekend.
Indeed so. Well, the podium is finally ready, and so up comes Sebastian Ash, and there Luca Ludwig as the race winners of the 6th race in the championship. Proud dad, Klaus Ludwig, very, very happy indeed, isn't he? And Luca Ludwig stands alongside Sebastian Ash on the top step of the podium. For second place, Andreas Wirth and Daniel Calvert make their way up onto the podium as well. And then for third place, Florian Stoll and Marc Basseng make their way to the podium as well. And of course, importantly, to prove the value of GT3 as a formula, 3 different brands represented on that podium. And Peter Zakowski heads up from Zach Speed to receive the trophy. All smiles as the German team takes honours in Belgium.
Und Sie dürfen strahlen, Sie haben allen Grund dazu. Lars Suschka, der Leiter der ADAC Motorsportabteilung in München, darf die Trophäen überreichen an die Aufsieger. Und wir sagen herzlichen Glückwunsch.
Lars Suchka it is that makes the trophy presentation, first of all to Sebastian Asch and to Luca Ludwig. There's Roland Asch. And Daniel Corvette and Andreas Wirth receive their trophy.
Lars Suschka, der Leiter der Motorsportabteilung ADAC München, für die Drittplatzierten. Da geht es auf die andere Seite des Treppchens. Und wir sagen herzlichen Glückwunsch an Nordpassen und Florian Stoll.
And there we see the P3 drivers collect their trophies, Mark Bessing and Florian Stoll, and to Peter Sagowski. Of course, winner of his own race at the Red Bull Ring. He took the ADAC Soapbox Challenge success. And he takes the team's trophy, and photos to be taken now. So the podium there, done and dusted from the ADAC GT Masters. Wow, what a couple of races we've had this weekend. And from David Addison and from myself, thank you so much for watching. And ADAC GT Masters returns at the Lausitz Ring in just a couple of weeks' time. Bye-bye.
Und ich denke, es wird jetzt auch Zeit, auf dem Podium euch zusammenzustellen. Da kommt am besten direkt mit den Trophäen nach vorne. Da will ich noch ein paar schöne Bilder von euch haben. Ah, Peter, das schmeckt, oder? Nehmen wir doch einfach mal, bevor wir jetzt hier ein paar Bilder noch machen, auf ersten Bilder, natürlich, ganz klar. Peter hat die Uhr schon mal beiseite gelegt. Ihr bleibt drauf, gutes Bild aufs Bild, natürlich. So, einmal Thumbnail da oben für unsere Fotografen, für euch. Geschichtsbücher. Die Laufsieger des dritten Durchgangs, des zweiten Durchgangs des sechsten Wertungslauf am dritten Veranstaltungswochenende. Das war die Zahlenreihenfolge. Danke an euch. Sebastian Asch, Luca Ludwig auf 1, Andreas Wirth, Daniel Kalwitz, die Zweitplatzierten, Florian Stoll, Nordpassing auf Rang 3 und Peter Zakowski für die erfolgreiche Mannschaft vom Team Zackspeed. Ja, manche Siege sind halt süß. Dort oben stehen sie. Glückwunsch noch einmal von dieser Stelle. Natürlich ein ganz großes Interesse und das ist der Teamchef von Ihnen, von Peter Zakowski und ein paar Worte zu Peter. Nationalunterricht der Bundesrepublik